from the residents that I'm going to be the chairperson for it. Over to you, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, sir.
Want to
Introduce yourself, your name, where you're coming from and all that.
Good evening, Mayor and panel and residents. Just for the record, Freedom Front Plus is also opposing the name changes, and we also are submitting tomorrow morning early our submission to the Minister. Yeah, basically as well, why we are also against the proposed name changes in the Eastern Cape, among others like Port Elizabeth, Macleay, Uitenhage. We also feel that it's not in the best interest of the residents. You know, at this stage, residents are burdened with poor service delivery and problems associated therewith. And also the proposed name change will have great financial implications for all spheres of government while making absolutely no contribution to alleviation of poverty, infrastructure development, or the growth of local economy. It is also unacceptable that the ANC government wants to change the names of towns, cities, as in doing so, it is disregarding the history and development of these towns and cities. And then lastly, the name change will constitute a breach of the compromise that was entered into in 1994, according to which it was agreed that municipalities will be given new names while the names of towns and cities are retained as is. Therefore, the Metro is called the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro, as the professor also proclaimed, and the name of the city remains Port Elizabeth as recognition and equal representation of our history and diversity. The only question I want to raise and ask the professor is that, you know, in media, newspapers, etc., from the committee, it came alight that the process, according to myself, the process was not 100% correct because of the fact that the minister should have given the 30-day period, what we're having now, before it was gazetted, whereby it was gazetted and then they called it an attachment, or we didn't see it as citizens, that in small print we had now 30 days. What is your take on that, Professor? Thank you, Mayor.
Who in government and were dealing with this process wanted to restore the disappearance of the Khoi language, like the Freedom Front, their argument, that there must not be an intention to erase Afrikaans, restore it. And I think this balances restoration. That's what it means when you're saying you're restoring something. That if you're restoring Xhosa, don't write it in Afrikaans, write it in Xhosa. And I think that's very important. And I think that's what we're talking about. That's why I'm saying our approach, it's not about fighting, it's about engaging into a national dialogue on the importance of our languages. Therefore, Pilar, the first process was saying, Minister, we are not saying we do not want to participate as the residents of the city in the project for nation building. That's the first process. We say it's a very critical issue that as South Africans we must have conversation to make sure that we recognize our heritage. I like what you say, because it's our heritage. And Professor, our heritage is that the arrival of the settlers here, it's part of our heritage. Even those who arrived before, we talk about the Khoi and the San, because some believe that the Ngunis like me are from the north and they came once the Khoi were here. Therefore, the recognition of the role of the Khoi, it's part of our heritage, part of South African heritage. And I want all of us to understand, because that is very much important. Because intentionally, there was an eradication of the culture and the people, the Khoi, even their history was written off. That's why there is importance for recognizing that. In building this national project, Professor, that issue is very important in this case. I always want to make an example about this. If you see the statue here in the front of the City Hall of Victoria, that statue is so important that must be kept. In order, when he walks and I walk, he walks with John and I walk with Bahle and point that, do you know what? This is Queen Victoria. He arrived here. In this particular year, to him was a liberator, to me might have been an oppressor. But for Sbahle, who does not understand, must have to understand that I'm able to point that Queen Victoria arrived here. And we celebrate whether it's a bad history. For me, for him, it might be a good history. But Sbahle must know that, and John must know that. Opposite to Queen Victoria, it's a square of Vusilemini. Then when I point there and say this is Vusilemini, contrary, Vusilemini is our liberator. Therefore, you are able to show Sbahle the evolution of the South African heritage. You don't have to go anywhere, it's here in front of you, and make that comparison. Therefore, building history and heritage, whether the heritage is good for you or bad, but it's your heritage, it's what you are, defines you, your evolution. Therefore, that's a very important intention. Because if we do not do that, Professor, I always want to make this story about the DRC. That in the DRC, they were colonized by Belgium. Petrus Lumumba, the liberator, took over. Mobutu Sese Seko killed Petrus Lumumba. And what Mobutu Sese Seko did, erased everything about Belgium and erased everything about the Mandela of the DRC, Petrus Lumumba, and changed everything and named every street, every song about himself and his tribe. Now you go to here in Central and ask those guys who cut, do you know the history of Belgium in your country? They know nothing. Do you know the history of Petrus Lumumba? They know nothing. Because he erased. A lot of books you get about Petrus Lumumba, you won't get them in the DRC. Because he tried to destroy everything. In South Africa, as we build this project, we must not commit those kinds of mistakes of trying to erase everything. I think your argument comes there in building a nation. That's why what the founding fathers of our democracy, they said, we must forgive our past, but we must not forget about it. Because the intention is that generations to come must not repeat the actions of our past. And I think that issue it's very important. Therefore, Phila, we are engaging with the government in saying, in this city, our approach has always been that when we named Main Street Govenbeki, we named the street going up here, the Western Road, Athol Fugard, and name the one that is going down, John Kane, and name the other part of our city, George Porter. And our deliberate action in that was that we must recognize all our people, all, meaning all the residents and all the people who have made a contribution. Athol Fugard is an artist like John Kane. Molly Blackburn is a politician. George Porter, a politician. We named some of our part like sports people and so on. That when you name all these places, you name the airport, David Stearman, it's a Khoi. You name Port Elizabeth, David Rebecca, you're saying it's a Khoi name. You name Udnate, Kariga, it's a Khoi name. You know Kamesh, a Khoi name. The biggest question that we're asking is this part of the project of nation building and social cohesion? Because it does no intention in naming must be restoring. That's why your issue comes again, that why do you restore one element? Why don't you reflect the diversity of the people in that recognition? That's another issue that is important. Because the project for nation building, it's about bringing people and also making people reconcile. You do it intentionally with an intention. That's why the professor is saying an intention to change must be there. Therefore, you can change names for reparation, for reconciliation, but a commitment must be shown that you are moving away from a particular period to embrace a new generation of people you want to build. Do you understand? Therefore, there must be that commitment. Amongst those is to changing certain names, to embrace certain groups of people. That must be done. That's why we are saying we're not necessarily fighting now. We are saying these are the facts that your actions have not embraced social cohesion and unity of people in Nelson Mandela. Therefore, this submission by the 68,000 people and also the city is to come to the minister's conscience, to say, talk to us. These are the values we think we want to engage with you. The last issue is that, Minister, can you be really realistic that only 310 or less than 350 people have participated in this process? In the biggest township after Mdantsane, only 10 people participated. Here, not more than 150. In Udnate, not more than 50, am I correct? In the area that you are taking its name, you didn't even go there. Is this justifiable action? Whilst you want to encourage participation, the professor says, why were you hurrying up? What rush were you on? You should have mobilized. You should have seen that many people were not involved. Talk to them, use other form, engage, bring them in this conversation. Because I like the chairperson says, certain names refuse to die. That, Minister, you might have a choice to give us a name that you like because you have a position of power. And then the names that you want to build a nation with, then they refuse to die, like Grebeg. Because why? People won't use those names. And people continue to use their old names. And is that what you want? That's not what you want. Because people have started to embrace the fact that we've accepted that we are Nelson Mandela, we are in a Nelson Mandela city. But why can't you listen and avoid imposing a name that we won't use? That's one of the dangers, Professor. I'm talking to you now as a political commentator, that this naming process have faced is that people name an area, they call it Makhanda. People continue to use it Khini or Grahamstown. That's not what we want. What we want is a conversation with the minister where all of us, not all 1.3 people, would be engaged in order for us to understand the rationale around these names. Therefore, we started that political process. I've written to the minister responded. That's why we are making this submission. And this submission and all these submissions are not about the mayor. They're about the people. Because we do not want to say these views are not the views of us, are the views of a mayor of the DA. Do you understand? Now, the voices should be the voices of the people. That's why I was asking many of you that whether have you submitted your proposals directly to the minister? Because it's not about my proposals, it's about your voices. And those voices must be heard because we're building a nation together. It's not only the minister who's building a nation, we are participating in building that nation. Then, Pila, it's going to depend on the response of the minister, the qualitative response, because I'm happy with what I was briefed. It's going to be a very balanced, not a destructive input, but a one that goes to the conscience of the minister. Because our intention could be that please reopen this process for us to participate in numbers, do you understand? Reopen this process for us to have a conversation. Then, if that happens, that's well and good. If we are shown a middle finger, I will have no choice but to consider other ways of challenging this process. It might be through a legal issue, based on a legal advice, but let us take this step by step based on what is going to be an outcome of the response of the minister. Therefore, with those few words, I want us to leave it there. But this has been a great process. Many of you might think this has been a small issue. But this issue has been so important that it put us, and all of us, in particular in this part of town, and the municipality of Mandela, it kept South Africans in a conversation. Quite a different conversation, that for the first time in this issue, we discussed it not on the basis of our color of skin. Because we have a mayor here who's saying he's not happy but he's black. And is not engaging in this discussion because he's black, is engaging on this discussion because of the content of the discussion. You have this man from Freedom Front here, he's engaging on this issue. Because conversations in South Africa in building a nation must not be about the classification of your race. They must be about how South Africans feel. Therefore, I think here in Nelson Mandela, we might have started a process, and I hope that a minister might listen to this conversation because it comes from all corners of the population. I think for the first time in this thing of renaming cities, from the ANC, from the DA, from the Freedom Front, from the UDM, from mainly all political parties. Therefore, it's a process that have opened an opportunity of engagement about issues of nation building. And I hope our government could listen to that clarion call, that the people of this city are together, whether they agree or disagree, in conversation with government. Now, what will test is the ability of our government to listen. Therefore, we'll submit this document to the minister as other people have submitted. And then when there's a reaction, we'll send. We will also share when the document is submitted properly and so on to everybody to see what was submitted on our behalf. There was a lot of advice to us that whatever we're doing, we must not be seen as just radical. We might be, if we just have a radical approach, we might be blocking some other people's ears not to listen. Therefore, we must be diplomatic in our approach because we are persuading people to give us an opportunity to have a conversation about what we want to be called And I think it's a fair request. With those few words, I want to thank the professor for a job well done, your advice, your counsel in these issues, and your assistance. And want to thank Mama Mwaz for the executive director for engaging in this conversation, the MMC for leading this process, and thank the business chamber and all other stakeholders who have participated into this conversation, political parties, for making your own submissions, because we who must make those submissions. Even anybody else who's here who have not submitted, there's still time until tomorrow for you to submit your submissions, and then we'll wait and see what will be the reaction of our government. Thank you very much and have a wonderful evening.